Hi, it's Nat here from Awesome Women in Australia. Today I really wanted to do a video on the diagnostic process, here in Australia anyway, and my actual diagnosis. So what I wanted to do was just pick out bits from the report that I got from the clinical psychologist that really kind of stood out for me, and just things that I wouldn't have associated with being autistic. But anyway, so before I get into it, I had done all the online quizzes. I started to think nearly 3 years ago, after my youngest son was diagnosed with autism, that I started thinking, maybe I'm autistic, because I'm starting to see a few of the things that he does, like in myself. So I did a lot of the quizzes online, which, by the way, are really good screening tools. Now, they don't actually diagnose you as being autistic or not, but there's many questionnaires that you can do that will give you an idea, and they will show you possible autistic traits, which is a good thing, because when you're not sure and one of your children gets diagnosed, you start to think, okay, let's find out. I want to investigate this. So that's what I did. And it was showing up on a few of the questionnaires pretty high. So I thought, okay, I would like to investigate this. I had, being a psychology student, I've done over 10 years of research and study, everything to do with psychology, and the last 3 years looking specifically at autism in women and girls. So I wanted to go through the diagnostic process because I wanted to have it confirmed that all my suspicions and doing all these quizzes that alluded to the fact that I could be autistic, well, I actually am autistic. So it's a very personal thing, whether you want to go ahead, see a clinical psychologist and pay lots of money and receive a formal diagnosis. So you can pay anywhere up to $2,000. Here in Australia, I paid about $1,200 and I had to wait about 6 months. So there are huge wait lists here in Australia to see clinical psychologists and diagnosticians, especially ones that specialise in women and girls. So if you're prepared to wait, I think it's definitely worth it. So without any further ado, let's go through my report. Okay, so this is the report that I received from the clinical psychologist, and basically it goes through the DSM-V criteria. So the DSM-V is what clinical psychologists must follow here in Australia, which stands for the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual number 5. So it's it's something that they have to follow in order for you to receive a diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder. And that's probably about the only time that I'll say disorder, because we're not disordered, but hey, that's for another video. Right, so you may or may not get a questionnaire beforehand, before you see the clinical psychologist. I think this is a great idea, because as an adult receiving a diagnosis, there is a lot to think about. I'm 45, I was diagnosed earlier this year. My childhood was a long time ago. So these questions were good because it gave me time to think. Things about your childhood. What stood out for you? Did you like collecting things? Did you have lots of friends? Did you go to birthday parties? Did you have birthday parties yourself? Those kind of questions. Also your life history. So up until the point that you see the clin psych. So to do with family, relationships, children. that kind of thing. So I also took in school reports from when I was a child. And this was great because the clin psych looked through all of this and she pointed out a lot of things that I didn't realise, that were, not picked up by my parents, that didn't really stand out at all. But because she's a professional in her field and the clin psych that I saw specialises in women and girls, this was great because she picked up on things like in my school report that the teacher said I was very shy. They said I didn't talk much in class, and this is going right back to year 2, so I was 7, 8 years old. Things in my report, like the teacher said, Natalie does not participate in class discussions. And it was also remarked that Natalie often does not answer. So I've always considered myself as being a quiet, shy person, especially at school. I remember, I never used to put up my hand. I was not one of those kids that went, yes, I know the answer. No, that was not me. And in the report, the clin psych noted things like, I'm able to initiate conversation, but as a child, she was very shy and she did not talk much. So all of this, let's just backtrack for a second. All of this comes under the DSM-V criteria. So I will run through quickly before I go any further, that the criteria that she follows is based on what, like I've said, like the clin psychs have to follow in order for you to get a autism diagnosis. So, number 1, persistent deficits in social communication and social interaction across multiple contexts as manifested by the following, currently or by history. So a lot of this for you and I, it's like that sounds pretty full on. What's all of that's about? But clinical psychologists are great because they will break it down for you. So part A of that is deficits in social emotional reciprocity, ranging from abnormal social approach and failure of normal back and forth conversation to reduced sharing of interests, emotions or affect, which is with an A, so emotions, to failure to initiate or respond to social interactions. So this is where it comes under about how you interact with other people, and if you can take a family member or a friend or someone that knows you personally to the interview that you feel comfortable with, this is a great idea because they will give their perspective on how they know you, and they can add things, which is great because at the time you may think, oh, I feel like I'm being interrogated and I can't think straight. So this is always a good thing. So for example, in my report, it says I struggle to process conversations at times and this impacts on the conversational flow. I can dominate conversations and will talk excessively about her preferred topics. So I love things like gardening. I will garden all day if I could, and research. And I'm always going off on tangents, which is maybe why it's taken me so long to finish my degree. No jokes. But I'm getting there. So it also says I struggled greatly to answer questions clearly and concisely and often gave convoluted replies. So I find that I tend to start on a topic and then I will go on, or I will go on and then go off on a tangent. So I guess I'm not very good at being direct with my responses and my answers. Yes, so that covers the first bit. Now the second part is deficits in nonverbal communicative behaviours used for social interaction, ranging from poorly integrated verbal and nonverbal communication to abnormalities in eye contact and body language, or deficits in understanding and use of gestures, to a total lack of facial expression and nonverbal communication. That is a lot to process. So, for example, when I first met the clin psych for my assessment, I thought I had great eye contact. However, she noted that my eye contact was fairly limited when I greeted her, but then after a while it got better with conversation, but it wasn't always sustained. She also noted that I demonstrated over-exaggerated facial expressions throughout the session. I can make eye contact, yes I can, but it can be limited, and just because I don't look at you when I'm talking to you, it doesn't mean that I'm not listening. So part 3 of the first bit, deficits in developing, maintaining and understanding relationships, ranging from difficulties adjusting behaviour to suit various social contexts, to difficulties in sharing imaginative play or in making friends, and absence of interest in peers. So this refers to, I guess, my friendships throughout my life, and at the moment I consider that I've got 2 really close friends, and another friend who I grew up with in New South Wales that I still keep in contact with. She's like my BFF. So yes, I have friends. I just don't have a lot of friends, and things like I couldn't recall who I sat with at recess time at school. Well, that was a long time ago, but yeah, that didn't really kind of stand out to me. I don't remember who my friends were kind of at school and that sort of thing. I prefer to mingle briefly and prefer one-to-one social contact. So that's more so now, especially if I'm with people that I don't know or have met for the first time. So it can get a little bit overwhelming. And the thing is, I do like conversations, and I like finding out about people. I guess I feel like I am a bit of a storyteller, and I'm really interested in people's backgrounds, but I guess it gets to a point where I'm like, okay, that's great, okay, nice to meet you, catch ya. Yeah, so if I'm with a crowd of people that I don't really know, it does become a bit uncomfortable and I just want to retreat.